All right, fact check this podcast. And picking up where we were supposed to have left off last week. And then last week was entirely my fault. We had not entirely my fault. We had a goat die, and that was a huge ordeal for everybody else in the family. So I had to deal with burying a goat and everything.
That is a huge ordeal. That's a lot of lost meals there you're putting in the ground.
It was the female, and they're also Nigerian dwarfs, so they are more pet-like. But like, she was our breeding goat, and we would sell the babies every year, and it was fun. But yeah, she I'm not sure what happened. She had been looking kind of sickly, and I gave her antibiotics and dewormer and did everything that I knew to do. And my son got really mad at me. He was like, well, we could take her to a vet. There's a vet in Bloomington. I'm like, the vet is an hour and a half away, and they're going to charge us $1,000 for a $150 goat. I'm like, we can buy 6 of them. Like, just.
I realize this sounds heartless, but also, F that.
Yeah. Like, would you like to pay the vet bill for the goat? Because I'm not particularly interested in. I mean, we can go to the auction next Friday and get 3 of them. Like, just
right.
So, yeah, I feel kind of bad because it is a little heartless on my part, but also there is a lot of
Yeah, but I mean, look, this is one of those things that comes with raising animals of any variety, right? Like, hey, look, I have 9 million of these things. One of them died, and yes, okay, it was the one with a personality, and all right, fine. That means we won't turn it into steak, but also we're not getting in the habit of paying thousands upon thousands of dollars in vet bills for animals that are worth $50.
Right.
No.
Right. I didn't see him get pissed off whenever I grabbed that chicken by his head, broke his neck, and then carved him up, and we had him for supper that day.
Right.
Evening, Midwit. Jim, how's it going? All right. So the plan for tonight's episode, a couple weeks ago, or I guess it's been 3 or 4 weeks ago now, but some military equipment started moving. It's getting to be about that time of year.
It's the boog. We're all gonna die. I can't believe we're still alive to have this podcast because we're moving military equipment, which means it's World War III, the boog, the aliens are invading, the lizard people are climbing out of their holes in the mountains, and we're all basically dead.
Or
anyway, you're saying,
or not. So around this time of year, every year, start seeing stuff moving around, and everybody has that reaction. It's World War III. They're getting ready to start moving into like your neighborhood. Everything's going on military lockdown. Martial law is coming. Here they are. Except that, as it turns out, this is kind of one of those things that the military does on a at least annual basis, and usually around the same time of year. And it's not necessarily that big a deal. So explain where the panic comes from on that, because I don't know. I grew up very close to Fort Campbell, so
yeah, that helps.
There's helicopters flying over at least once a week. There's shit moving around all the time. Like, we would figure out their flight patterns and stuff, and whenever you had a decent idea of about when they were going to come over, you kind of watch, and sometimes you would get to see like some cool helicopter formations come through, and sometimes there would be some like really big, really cool equipment that would come through, and a lot of times it would just be like the one that would fly over. But for the most part,
one Black Hawk just banging.
Yeah, you can figure out when it was happening and kind of watch them and be like, oh, this is really cool. Especially as a kid, that was really cool to see them fly over. So, and we played, when I was in high school, we played football games at Fort Campbell against Fort Campbell High School every year. So, every other year you get to go to the base and see everything there at the base and stuff. And it was really cool. So
See, this is the thing.
I never really had a big freak out about it because I was, around it somewhat regularly
all the time, right?
Yeah.
Well, so that's the thing. If you're close to a military base and you've lived next to one for like your entire life, even if you never joined the military, like the sun is shining, temperatures are warming up, it's spring, and there go the Humvees, right? And if you're old enough, you went, oh, there go the 5 tons, there go the 7 tons, right? But the problem is people who are ridiculously unaware or have never lived next to a military base. Because the thing that causes the panic every year, and it's always the same thing, is some sort of equipment, any equipment that is military equipment on a train. Now, I don't know what it is about trains because, I live next to a decent sized highway, close enough to a decent sized highway that 5 tons and whatever the stupid little army thing is that they replaced 5 tons with, and Humvees and all kinds of crap just drives down the road because I'm in the middle of 2 bases, which is to say they're, 400 miles apart or something like that. And they've sort of got to drive past my house if they're going to drive. And the military has you can drive so many hours before we demand that you put your equipment on a train, right? And so somehow or another, it's usually not a convoy driving down the highway that freaks people out, but some jerk off who's walking down a trail who, according to him, he's been walking down for the last 25 years and never seen this before in his life, records some Humvees on flatbed train trailers cruising across the country and is like, gentlemen, I think the UN is about to invade. And they're going to have the help of the United States military because I've never seen anything like this before in my life. And for the past quarter century, I've been walking on these train tracks. I've never seen such a thing. It happens now every other week. Yes, it does. And you haven't seen it either. 2 main options here: because you're retarded or because you're lying. All right. Now, one of those 2 things, there's some subheaders under those. That's fine. But those are the 2 through lines here. You're a retard or you're lying, right? How do I know this? How can I be so certain of this? Well, first and foremost, the Marine Corps got 29 Palms, California as a base in something like 1958 or something like that, right after the Army decided that nobody could live here. So the Marine Corps moved there because that's what they do. And if you need to do desert warfare training in the Marine Corps and you are on Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, the way that you get your equipment to 29 Palms, California is you load it on a train. And by the way, you have always loaded it on a train. Always. As Sergeant Major doesn't even know someone who didn't put it on a train, put his equipment on a train to go to 29 Palms. All right. Grandpa's grandpa. Nope. Everybody, always, forever. Basically, since there's been a railroad and, 29 Palms. It's the way it's always been. Now, if you're, for example, going to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and you are in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, you just get in the back of the trucks and you drive, right? Which is why you see military convoys, because I know this because I got asked. All right. I know there is like some weird perception out there amongst the civilian populace that like you go to boot camp and then you come home and that's it. Right. That's what everybody does. Right. Maybe they go to war, but then they come home. Right. So there's this thing called an active duty military. It's guys, their whole job in life is the military. All right. They exist. They're on all of these bases that I have mentioned, that Justin has mentioned, right? And they go from one place to the other, at least occasionally, right? Hey, we're going to go to this other base, do some stuff over on this other base. And this is where you get convoys from, right? So chances are very good that if you see a military convoy, they're going from one base to another for, I'm not going to kid you, any number of reasons, not just training. Every now and again, there's prisoner transport. And yes, sometimes that happens in Humvees. No, it shouldn't happen. But does it? Yes, of course it does. Why? Military. But the thing that makes this happen every year at this time. Every single year in spring, everybody on the internet freaks out because those guys who do go to boot camp and then come home, they're called the reserves, right? These are your 1 weekend a month, 2 week a year guys. And guess when they do that 2 weeks a year? Same thing they told you in high school. You can go to college and join the United States Army. We do 1 weekend a month of training and 2 weeks a year in summer after finals. Well, they probably lied about after finals because this is the time that your recruiter lies to you, but it's almost all in spring to fall. Almost all of it for everybody. It's in the warm months. They don't generally do 2 week a year training. I know one of you, oh, well, I was at the Marine Corps Reserves, and our annual training was in December. Yes, that's because the Marine Corps hates you. That's fine. That's how we do things. And if you were in the Marine Corps Reserves, you know that. But everybody else goes, man, if I have to carry around 100 pounds of gear, 20 pounds of rifle and ammo, and wear camis instead of shorts and a t-shirt, it'd be pretty sweet if it wasn't 10 degrees outside. Let's do this in summer. Right? Now, I know. Dodd, you just said they're going to do it in summer. Okay. You paying attention? They fuck you in the drive-thru. If you get that reference, you're old as shit. They still have to ship the shit. All right. Now, you who live in the era of Amazon packages may have noticed that you don't click purchase and then some shit appears on your desk or next to your phone. It has to actually get put in a box and mailed to you. Now, imagine if you were ordering a car instead of whatever Chinesium sex toy that you probably just bought off Amazon. It would take a while. Somebody would have to ship that in some fashion that was probably not put it in the back of a USPS truck because specifically if you ordered a car the size of a Humvee, it doesn't fit there. Now, if you had to ship very large vehicles and you didn't care what it cost because you're the government, how would you do that? You think you might put it on trains, the things that the government subsidized being put in to begin with, and get cut rates on all the time? And as far as I can tell, have an annual number of free shipments that they're allowed to just do. I mean, do you think you might use that? Or are you going to drive? And by the way, pay guys to drive, right? Because for those of you who are active duty, the guard only gets paid for the days they work, right? And that money comes out of state budget. So they can't just add more days. It's not like active duty, right? They don't have an unlimited amount of time of yours to waste because they have to pay you. So put it on a train. And you want it to get there before you do because you have 2 weeks to try and make a bunch of otherwise nasty civilians act like the United States military. All right. So what you don't want is them waiting there for 4 days for their gear to get there. So if you, dear miscellaneous viewer, see a piece of military equipment going from one place to another and no one is shooting at you, it's probably not the Boog, probably not the Civil War, it's probably not World War III. I mean, it might be, but it'll be unrelated. Probably not, the UN invading the United States. That'll be that UN truck that they found in Texas that was mapping out neighborhoods. You can flip out over that. All right. But it won't be a Humvee on the back of a train. And by the way, to the best of my knowledge, and I'm sure there is one somewhere, but there is no procedure for laying siege to a city that involves putting your Humvee on a train, sending the train into the city, and not being with said Humvee. All right? Now, maybe somebody did, but I am not aware of such a thing. Lots and lots of rules of fighting from Humvees, killing people en masse from Humvees. There's ways to shoot at guys in places you're not supposed to shoot at from Humvees. But they don't involve your Humvee being 900 miles away on a train. Okay? All right? I hope this has been educational. I hope the next time you see somebody spurging out as it's not me, because I will be. All right. I will be writing a 9,500 word post about how people are retarded every spring. Because
it's one of my favorite Twitter pastimes, honestly.
Right. I have been doing this for 7 years. For 7 years. I have been making an annual crusade to stop spurging out about military equipment moving all over the country. So much so that I have recently found out there are people who only know me because they're like, oh, hey, it's the guy that tells you not to spurg out about military equipment moving across the country. And I went, you don't follow me. Who are you? I don't know, man, but I see your posts every year.
That's amazing. Okay, so in the event of Civil War II, World War III, UN invasion, what the fuck ever, where in the pecking order would the National Guard fall in like responding to something like that? That they might actually be like waiting to unload these things off the train so they can go lay siege to a city or something.
So,
like, I feel like they would be somewhere pretty far down the pecking order. Like, it probably would have already been happening for a while before this becomes a problem.
It depends a lot on which one of those things you actually picked, right? So if anybody had classified whatever was going on as some sort of policing action, there would be a lot of political hullabaloo about posse comitatus, regardless of how functional that is, right? And so the National Guard would end up there first just because nobody cares about them being there. Now, this goes to the thing of what they actually are, which is a gear drop. All right. Because the way that I know every single year it is about to be time to start posting about how military equipment moving is not that big of a deal is that every Marine I know starts sending me the meme that says the National Guard is moving. Marines do not steal their equipment. All right. This happens anytime they respond to anything, right? Like, so, earthquake, a flood, or something, the National Guard will show up and they'll put up levees and they'll do engineer things. And every Marine I know will start sending me the don't steal their Humvees, don't steal their rifles. Right? And if you were a Marine, you know exactly why. And if you're not, it's because they don't secure shit. All right. And the Marine Corps never has gear. Unless the Army has gear and doesn't secure it, in which case the Marine Corps has gear. And so, some habits die hard. What can I say? If there's just an unsecured saw lying on the ground, well, gear adrift is gear a gift. But I mean, hypothetically, right? In the world of an actual example of a hypothetical invasion being countered by the National Guard, look to Texas, right? Now, Texas's National Guard is down at the southern border, building border walls. They've got Humvees. They've got heavy equipment. It's mostly engineers, plus other people doing engineer work, right? You might see a lot of that, right? In fact, you probably will see a lot of that. Notoriously, Hurricane Katrina, the National Guard responded. Sandy, the National Guard responded. Basically, all the hurricanes that are actual hurricanes, the National Guard responds, right? But you may notice, even though they're carrying weapons, take a quick look at the weapons that the National Guard is carrying. Most of them don't have mags. All right. Well, about half of them don't have mags. Now, I don't know if you know this, but it is very hard to kill people, specifically at range, if you have a weapon that doesn't have ammunition, right? Now, it's much easier up close. There's a whole bunch of, butt strokes, all kinds of great stuff you can do. But if there's a guy 50 feet from you and he has a gun and he doesn't have bullets, he has a rock, okay? And this is what it actually looks like when the National Guard responds to things. even a declared invasion, which, by the way, Texas governor has said it's an invasion, so I have deployed the National Guard. That's about what you could expect. And I know, dear internet, I know. But Dawn, if you're responding to an invasion, shouldn't there be like 50 cows? I'm not running this invasion response. Okay. I have offered to run this invasion response about once a month. I tweet at the governor and go, hey, man, I'll run this invasion response for you. And it won't work like this. So this is what you get. All right. And by the way, for everybody who, what was it, the fat ATF agent, the fat FBI agent, right? The memes that have been going around forever about these people. That's the National Guard. Okay. Look, guardsmen, I know there's like I guess Tim Kennedy's a guardsman now, and that dude's at least was jacked. That there are some of you, okay, but if you're a currently serving National Guardsman, I'm not wrong that there at least 1/3 of the guys are in fact MEAL Team 6. All right.
And I think it probably depends on the part of the country too. Like, I know a lot of the guard back home in Kentucky take it pretty serious, but I've also seen the ones that rotate through that they definitely don't.
Yeah. Well, and it's like most things, right? It's going to be a little bit unit dependent. 1/3 of the guys as an overall of the guard, right? So if your unit has one fat guy, right? You're the counterweight to a unit that is 80+% fat guys. Okay. That's how we get to 1/3. And I know. Dawn, all the grunts take it super seriously, bro. We've got like a workout program, and like we tow semis in our off time when we're not drilling, and like we're getting it, bro. We're all trying to be Delta in the guard, and so like we're all getting it. That's great. At some point, you have stepped onto a base next to the admin unit that communally weighs about 47 tons and is 100 guys. All right. You know that I am telling you the truth. This is how it is. This is a fact. This is not really a debatable one. Yes, like usual, the cooler stuff you do, the more likely you are to be in shape. On the other hand, this is just a true fact of duty, right? You go to do something over at the front gate, and the big admin office, and what happens? You walk in there, and everybody weighs 250 pounds, and they are not jacked. All right, and you know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. Okay. Now, like the one angry admin guy is gonna be there, bro. I only eat whey protein, and I work out 16 hours a day. Like, yeah, you're the one. We got it.
Okay, so what would constitute equipment moving that might be concerning?
A Humvee with a gunner shield with a 50 cal in it that is pointed at cars. All right. At that exact moment, something is very wrong. Okay. It is pretty unlikely you will see any military equipment outside of a tank because you can't demount the gun, right? But or a howitzer because it is the gun. But it's unlikely that you will see small arms attached to vehicles in some way that the civilian populace can see. And if you can, that's probably intentional.
Well, like I don't think the average American understands how much goes into securing vehicles to those flatbed cars. Like you're not just jumping on that thing and driving it off the car to go to war. Like there's a whole process that goes into actually getting it on there, getting it secure, getting it ready to transport. Then once it arrives, getting everything like taken apart, getting it off, getting it in position and in shape that it's actually ready to do stuff. And the stuff that they're going to do in the drills is not the same stuff that they're going to do in a lot of in actively sieging laying siege to a city or stuff like it's
yeah.
there's so many layers of it that the average person can't even fathom like what goes into it.
Let me give you an idea of just how innocuous this can be. All right. So you see 40 Humvees on a train, right? You're watching this really long train. It's 2 Humvees per car, right? And the whole thing is Humvees, right? There is a thing called convoy training. You know what convoy training is? You drive around in big circles, right? You do this for hours. You make, you go out to a base that has trails. It's not just a circle like a track, right? But you go out, you drive into the woods, and then you drive into the woods, and then you drive into the woods some more, right? You make stops, you set up radio calls, you make sure you can establish and maintain radio communications while doing this. You make sure that you can navigate from one point to another, given only a map. You practice how it is that you respond to oncoming vehicles if they're not doing what you want them to do. You practice how you respond to somebody cutting into the convoy. You practice how it is that the convoy will react if somebody starts shooting at you. And you can do this for a whole drill, right? Which, again, to be fair, is just a weekend, right? But get up in the morning, get in the Humvee, start driving, and don't stop driving. Guy standing out top, holding onto his 50 cal. Guy next to that, holding onto his 240, trying to take a nap, but Humvee shocks suck, so he's doing this, right? The guy in the back doing this, cocked his head into his rifle. He's trying to take a nap. Every now and again, he gets some sleep, right? On and on this will go. And by the way, you might think like, I mean, you're just kind of out driving around, right? Well, what you're missing is that generally the way that you react to getting shot at involves step on the gas real hard or get out of the truck and take a knee in 150 pounds of gear and then go out a little further, right? Right. And then get back in the truck. And so everybody just gets run around all day. Yes, your military is paying for this, right? Now you might think that's stupid. You might, but I will tell you factually that it is helpful to have everybody know what to do in case you get shot at while driving around. All right. That is actually a useful skill. And the way that you get and maintain useful skills is practice. So, to be fair, no less than 5 and probably no more than 10% of the vehicles that people see going across the country on trains, they are freaking out about because guys are about to go drive in circles for 48 hours. All right? That's freaking out about, just so as you know. I know, I just said it's the minority, but the rest of the time, they're going to do whatever their job is on a military base in the middle of nowhere. All right? That's what they're going to do. I did a brief amount of time in the California National Guard, and we would go down to a base and shoot artillery. And then we would go home. That's it. And sometimes that meant cannons driving down the highway. Seriously, it did. And guess what? Not one time, even though I did drive at least vaguely toward Los Angeles, and I might have been willing, at no time did we start shelling in American City. I know, it's weird. Clearly, the only time the military does anything is kill babies in foreign and or localized countries, right? I mean, that's it. As the anti-war protesters have told us for years, like, we just hunt through countries and we're like, man, that guy's got a machine gun, but let's just not screw with him. But this baby, I got me a K-bar, all right? And that's how it works. That's actually what military training is. That's going to be clipped. Anyway.
That's going on your channel.
There you go.
Which I still have access to, oddly enough. I noticed that the other day when I was editing a thing, and it was like, would you like to sign into Don the Pleb account? I'm like, maybe. I'll consider that.
I'll think about it. But to the loading and unloading thing, right? This is what gets me, is when that it's like, it's country folk that are like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. And I'm like, Bro, you have put a tractor on a trailer ever. All right. I know you have. I know some piece of heavy equipment, you put it on a trailer. Did you just like set it there and then like hop on and drive it off? I mean, if you're just taking it across the property or something, maybe. But when you brought it home from the dealership, is that what you did? Or did you chain it down? Did you secure it for shipping? And did that take some amount of time? Like, don't get me wrong, it's not one vehicle, it's not like hours and hours of work, but what about 100 of them? Do you think that might take some time? No. Obviously not. They're just going to jump in, drive right off the side of these train cars, and just get to work killing Americans, which for some reason hasn't happened yet.
I think that's the thing that sticks with me the most on a lot of things is how little people understand just how much time and equipment and effort and like the logistics of what goes into moving large things. Like most people can't even fathom what it takes to move their car from wherever the fuck it came from to the dealership they bought it from, much less Humvees, tanks, like large shit. Like and you don't move that stuff with everything just attached to the way it's going to be whenever you're like actually going to drive out and go to war or do drills or whatever. Like all that stuff has to be taken off, secured. Like you don't even ship like relatively smallish packages that have a lot of moving parts and stuff. You take all the parts out and secure them before, like, you can't just leave all that stuff attached, because you know what happens driving, going across train tracks where the whole fucking thing vibrates the whole time. Anything that's attached is not going to be attached when it arrives. And if you're lucky, it arrives still, like it just falls off and falls into the compartment and doesn't like end up on the side of the road somewhere. And, you know, maybe with the guard, that's, you know, the Marines could make a pretty off of from point A to point B and picking shit up off the side of the road, but I highly doubt it.
Great. Now we're going to have Marines police calling railroad tracks.
We calling out the routes. Oh, they're coming through here. Go check. See what's on the side of the tracks.
I didn't make that suggestion. All future Marines, Lance Corporals who are about to be police calling railroad tracks. That was not me. I didn't do that.
I'm just saying, like, you're not leaving everything that's necessary attached. Like, there's going to be a significant amount of time that it takes to get stuff off, get it all, you know, like put back together. I mean,
yeah, the things that ship the fastest in that sense are up armored Humvees, right? Because it's just a giant shell of steel, and so you don't have to take much of anything off. You just fold the mirrors in, and that's as good as you're going to get anyway. Everything else, well, to be fair, I've never shipped a tank, so I don't know. But presumably that's going to be the same sort of thing. You know, you combat lock the tank and you call it a day. But basically everything else is going to be, you know, the last time that you ordered a blender or whatever innocuous thing you ordered from Amazon, you had to spend 30 minutes assembling it, right? This is why, right? For those of you who hate IKEA but also enjoy their low prices, this is how they get them, right? They don't ever have to disassemble the thing. They start it disassembled and they send it to you that way, right?
Oh, right. There's a reason it doesn't come already fully assembled, because just the shipping process alone would fucking destroy it if they send it to you fully assembled. Like, I don't understand how people don't comprehend that. They're like, oh, why do I have to put it together? Why couldn't it just be sent to me ready to go? Like, because it would be non-functional. Like,
right.
Have you ever seen the way they handle packages, just like FedEx and all the others? Like, have you not seen the way they just toss the shit wherever?
Yeah.
Like, everything in that box is very padded and secured so that all of the tossing and the handling doesn't completely destroy it. If it, there's different equipment and stuff that we have to use in the grain industry when I was in that, and like whenever it would come fully assembled, which was cool because even as like tech savvy as I am, I don't want to be trying to figure out where these parts are supposed to go or how they get hooked up. But in order to actually make it function, you have to take out all kinds of like packaging that's holding all of the assembled pieces in place. Like it literally will not run straight out of the box until you take everything off, because they have to secure it in such a way so that it doesn't get destroyed just by the basic rumbling of a truck carrying it from point A to point B, much less any of the other extra handling that goes on.
So this is the other thing of where you get people inclined to make these kinds of statements, is that if you have only ever driven in a Honda Civic, right, going from point A to point B is relatively comfortable. And you can think whatever you want about how comfortable Honda Civics are. But I promise you that specifically, like post 90s Honda Civics, right? But I promise you that what it is not is leaf spring trucks, specifically older leaf spring trucks, where, don't get your teeth right at that right spacing. Otherwise, they're going to clack. That kind of truck, right? And if you've never been on a train other than Amtrak, who goes out of their way to make your ride very comfortable, then it's the same sort of thing. Well, but like I've ridden Amtrak before. Trains are like super comfortable, man. Like you rode in a passenger car, bro. You're not coal. You're not a Humvee. You're not wood. All right. There are no shocks to speak of on those cars. There's just those giant ass coils that hold those rail wheels in place. That's it. Nothing else. And so no, that's not what shipping on trains is like.
Oh, but Don, I've been in a Hummer and it was a super smooth ride. Like, no, you've been in an H2. That doesn't fucking count. That's not.
Oh man.
Maybe even you've been in like a civilian H1 that was like really cool. It was not what they're riding around in the military.
No, it is not. I've been in an H1, and it is. I would trade one immediately for Humvee. Like, just get that Humvee the fuck out of here. I don't care if it's worth more. You can give me the hungry engine argument all you want. Suspension is amazing. All right.
Like people who don't understand how much vibration is on that stuff. Like you said, they've only been on Amtrak. Like they haven't done like cargo train type stuff where you're even just moving on like a short piece of track with grain cars and like coal cars and stuff. That shit's rough. Even if you're the one who's actually like operating the power, like if you're in the locomotive itself, it's still rough. Like you are still getting beat up. Like that shit's not. It's not for the weak jointed.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's amazing because people will sit and listen to trains roll over rail and hear a click clunk, click clunk, click clunk, click clunk, and not once think, what makes that sound? Right? With the train does this in a very little fashion every single time. Right. So it's only going, if you're going from the East Coast to the West Coast for, say, that 29 Palms run, you're only going about 3,000 miles. That's happening every, what are those things, 20 feet? It's only 2 or 3 million times across this trip. Or they drop, right?
Well, I mean,
it builds up.
The rails themselves, like if you've ever just worked inside of like the port of Indiana here, or just any port, rails are not super smooth. It doesn't matter how new they are, and most of them are not very new. They don't do a whole lot of rail replacement across the country super frequently. A lot of that shit is really, really old, and they maintain it just enough so that you don't get an excessive number of derailments. There's like an allowable number of derailments. So as long as we're not exceeding that, cool, keep fucking running it. Like we'll replace the shit that breaks to the point that we have to, but otherwise we're going to run it until it breaks and we have to.
Well, I mean, the last time they did a massive rail replacement was the 70s or something like that. And it was a massive rail replacement. And since then, I don't know that anybody's replaced more than about a mile of track at one time. So probably half the track you've ever seen in your life is if you're my age, older than you.
It's I mean, the whole premise of this could be boiled down to the average person does not understand everything that goes into just the day-to-day shit that goes on, which, I mean, that could kind of be the average or the premise of most of these episodes is that we've done, is like people just don't understand. And how is it that like we both have a pretty decent understanding of most of this stuff, and it's not like all of this is like particularly in our wheelhouse, but we've been exposed to it enough, like just getting out and having jobs and stuff that require you to be a little bit hands-on, to do shit that is like hard, physical, not sitting at a desk every day.
Yeah.
You figure out this stuff pretty easy and pretty quick. Like it's just,
Well, that's exactly it, right? So, how many people currently exist that grew up either in the inner city and never left, or in the suburbs and never did, any of this, right? And some of your inner city guys and some of your suburb guys are, but I became a, insert trades guy here, and be that as it may, right? How many of that guy's neighbors all went to school, then went to college, then worked for corporate entity number 7 that is in town, and the only thing that they've ever done in relation to any of this is in fact ride Amtrak or the subway in New York or something like that, which is probably not the most comfortable ride in the world, outside of other New Yorkers being on it, but the train itself, not the most comfortable ride in the world. And at best, that's what they think shipping on a train is like, right? Oh, well, I've been on the subway. It's got to be just like that, right? No. Right? Not even a little.
It was like, so with the company that I work for, we do a few different products that we ship overseas, and they put them on these shipping containers. And the original plan was we just like put them on these containers, right? We just load the container with X number of pallets of said good. Like, are we not going to secure it any more than that? Like, have you ever been to one of the ports and see the way they handle these containers? Like, the container comes in on a truck or a rail car or what have you, and the guy who's operating the crane just comes over, goes down, picks it up, slings it over, and slams it back down over here. Like, do we really want to be moving stuff like this? Like, it doesn't seem like a particularly... I remember the first time we did a China shipment with the plastics company that I worked for, and they wanted an odd number of, so it was 48 inch by 48 inch by 48 inch cube boxes of plastic pellets, and they wanted an uneven number, and they were like, oh, you can just stack the odd one in the nose in between the two that are up there. I was like, have y'all never been to a port and seen the way they handle these things?
Yeah.
The box that we put in the nose up on top of the others, when it
gonna make it
right, when it arrives in China, it will now be completely destroyed and spread all over the rest of the container. Everything else might make it pretty securely because they fit pretty tight. That one is going to be a fucking pinball from here to China. Like,
yes,
this
literally
is not a good idea. And I told them this. And then we got pictures when it arrived in China of the customer complaining because that box was so destroyed. And I was like, maybe,
man,
like,
if only we could have foreseen this coming.
Maybe listen to the guy that's like been around one of these ports, because we loaded. I worked at a facility in New Jersey, and we loaded soybean containers, and like once the container was full, you built a fucking wall with OSB board in the back so that all of the soybeans that were loaded in it didn't come slam into the back and blow the fucking doors open. Yeah. Like, they're not gentle with this shit. Why? No. Like, I just, it's amazing how people just don't understand how that sort of shit works. And that's the shit that like drives everything. Like, things move through ports, things move through rail yards. at
Well,
huge
so
volumes.
I think that's the thing that people don't understand, right? So when 2020 lockdowns began, they shut a port in Los Angeles, right? Because California is nuts, and they shut down everything. And when they did, I saw a lot of people be like, "Well, how big of a deal is that?" And I was like,
Massive.
"About a third of the country shit runs through that port. What do you mean? How big of a deal is that?" And because it wasn't, it wasn't side port overflow. No, it was main Los Angeles port. I mean, half the shit on the West Coast comes through that port. Good third of the country shit. If it comes from overseas at all, and you are west of the Mississippi, you've probably gotten something shipped to you through that port, whether you knew it or not. Bare minimum, if you ever purchased anything from Walmart west of the Mississippi, it came through that port. All right. And so you get people, and I've had people ask me similar things because I've been around ports, been around shipping plenty in my life, and they're like, well, why aren't they gentle with this? Like, well, you know how you complain that if you're 3-day shipping, it's 1 day late? Well, yeah. They're going as fast as they possibly can, and occasionally your 3-day package is 1 day late. So if you want that package here in 3 weeks instead of 3 days, start telling them to be gentle, because that's what it's going to take.
Yeah. If you wonder why sometimes your shit shows up busted all to pieces in the box, it's because they're moving it as fast as they humanly possibly can. Like,
yeah,
and that's the same on the truck traffic stuff. I worked for TJ Maxx for a while, and I worked in a management supervisory role with TJ Maxx at one point, but I had also worked in shipping where you load the trailers and stuff, and basically it's like playing human Jenga.
Yeah,
the boxes come off the line, and then like you have a manifest that it doesn't tell you what you're getting. It tells you they're getting packages. And then as they start to come down the line, then you have to start figuring out, how am I going to build this in the trailer so that it takes up either as much space as possible where it's not going to fall over, or as little space as possible, because after it leaves here, it's got to go somewhere else, and they're going to load a whole bunch of other shit onto it. That I've got to leave them room to put all their shit on as well. So like you're just building walls out of boxes of shit, and some of the boxes of shit are really heavy, and some of the boxes of shit are really light, and you got to figure out like where to stack them, and sometimes they come down so fast that you're just like, fuck it, just stick it wherever it'll go, and yeah, as long as it's in, it's good. Like if I can shut the doors at the end, okay, cool, fuck it. Like, and that's how, if you shop at any box store, that's how most of your shit gets moved to you, is some variation of that. So like, it's not ideal, but like people are moving it as fast as they fucking can, and you're doing the best you can with what you got. And sometimes you just got to start throwing shit on there and hope for the best. Like maybe it's not going to break in before it gets to the other side. And also they expect a certain number of claims per load and stuff. And so it's like, that falls in the 8% that they expect to get fucked up. Like I'm not even going to worry about that one.
Yeah. No, don't misload a Ferrari and nobody cares. Right. Yeah. And I realize that probably to any number of you, that sounds ridiculous, but we ship like on a per package basis, like trillions of packages a year with a T. All right. The quantity of things that get moved around this country is, and it depends a little on how you break it down, but it is way more than one item per person per year. All right. By many, many, many times over. There's just literally not enough people to move everything gently, right? Even if all we did was ship things, there's still not enough people to move things gently, not and keep up the rate that we move things around this country. And that's just here, right? That doesn't include the stuff that goes somewhere else or comes here from somewhere else, right? Just within the confines of the US, we don't have enough people, period, to move everything and be gentle with it and nice and slow and take our time and get anything resembling what we have now, right? And in the world of that same sort of thing, I worked for UPS for a little bit, and it worked exactly like that, right? There's a conveyor belt, and there is just a mountain of crap coming down the conveyor belt, right? And there's a guy standing in the back of a semi just doing this as fast as he can into, by the way, a giant pile of other packages. It's very enlightening as to why, like, this explains every damaged package I've ever received in my life. On the other hand, like, hey, this truck has to be emptied in the next 4 hours. There is a semi and 6 guys who are unloading this truck and loading it into those trucks. All right. Which, by the way, if you've never emptied a semi, no matter how nice it is to empty, unless you have a set of forks or something, if you're doing it by hand, 4 hours is not a huge amount of time to empty a semi that is just packed to the gills like these things are, which is so that, you know, however expensive you think shipping is now, you want semis that aren't packed to the gills, it's going to be that many times more expensive. Oh, we'll just only pack it halfway. Cool. Shipping just doubled in price. Just like that fast. All right.
And it's honestly not going to take that much less time to get it unloaded on the other end.
Nope. Okay, but here's what will happen is they will change that 4 hours to 2 hours, right? And then another truck will come in. And so then there will be 30 minutes to break down everything with the one truck and get it ready to go. And then everybody will go over to the other truck. This whole thing will take about half an hour, right? Now it will have taken 30 minutes more to move the same amount of packaging, right? And this, by the way, is the kind of thing that people who are not familiar with an industry come up with when they say, like, oh, I could fix this. Like, yeah, well, you did indeed fix that one problem, but you screwed up everything else. Well done. Right.
I feel like everybody should spend just a couple weeks working in a distribution center of some sort and see how things actually move in and out. Like the plastics company that I worked for, I ran everything for the warehouse, and I put together all of the receiving schedules, and like I allowed 2 hours per truck. So, and we're unloading everything. It's all palletized. We're unloading all with a fucking fork truck, but I need 2 hours to get it off the truck, get it sorted, go through it, sample all of it, figure out what the fuck it is, and then get it all like closed back up and moved into the plant wherever it's going to go so that it's out of the way. And that's still not enough time. Like, you know, we're sitting there at an hour and 45 minutes and the next truck has already showed up and he's pissed off because we haven't started unloading him yet, even though his dock time isn't for another 15 minutes. And we've still got half the shit from the last truck on the floor trying to figure out where we're going to put it because the testing hasn't come back yet, or the testing was unclear and we're not sure if it's going to be good enough for this or if we're going to have to use it as you know, an off-grade stuff, or like, you know, I mean, and to sit there and like, all right, and after we get this one, then 2 hours from now we got another one, and then 2 hours from now we got another one, and then 2 hours from now we got another one, and like we're just going to do this all fucking day. Like it, you know, people are doing the best they can with what they got on a lot of that shit, and it's like you said about the Ferrari. Like I'll have guys that'll come to me in my current job. They'll be like, "Hey, I got a couple cases of this that are broke." I'm like,
and
okay, the customer will send us a claim. Like, just fucking load it. I'm not dealing with that. If it's something that's like, you know, high dollar, you know, higher end product, okay, let's fix it. But if it's, you know, just the basic shit, like, okay, fuck it. The customer will send us a claim. Like, I'm not spending an extra 20 minutes to replace 2 cases of some bullshit that sells for $9. Like, just
So that by the way, that probably sounds absolutely ridiculous to people who have never done any of this before, right? But here's what that difference looks like in practical application, right? You can delay that truck by 20 to 40 minutes to go get you a new product and swap it out on the floor. That truck, because it's delayed by 20 to 40 minutes, won't make wherever it's supposed to go. Now, because the federal government says they can only drive so many hours per day, that matters. Because now that 20 to 40 minutes may very well end up at destination a full day late. So what this really looks like to you, dear viewer, is walking into the store and going, why is the shelf empty? Right? Because 20 to 40 minutes. And by the way, with people not skipping the 20 to 40 minutes, that still happens sometimes. So all this, I want to be able to walk into the supermarket and buy whatever I want. This is the cost. Okay. It just is.
Well, and with my loaders, the good ones especially, 20 to 40 minutes is more than enough time to load 1.5 trucks. So the time that I'm losing to replace 2 cases of low dollar bullshit, I can get another truck and a half out. Like it's not worth the cost. It's not worth the time.
Yeah.
It's and like you said, like these truck drivers, whew.
Yeah. Well,
just because their dock time is 8:00 doesn't mean they're going to be there at 8:00. And a lot of times, by the time they do show up 6 hours late, they're like, I'm going to be out of time in about an hour and a half. It's like, well, maybe you should have showed up 6 hours ago when you were supposed to fucking be here to begin with. Like, we'll do the best we can.
Park in the parking lot. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's nothing I can do about this.
Yeah. It's there's so many logistical challenges and like bullshit that you have to deal with. And the average Walmart shopper will never, ever understand any of that at all. And it's like, which goes back to like the premise of this whole episode with shit moving across the country on rail cars for the military. Like the average person that sees those cars going by with all of those Humvees and stuff on them, they have absolutely no fucking clue any of the logistics that went into just getting that stuff on the train, much less where it's going, why it's going there, what it takes to get it off, what it takes to get it ready for whatever it's going to be doing. Like it's just like
it's a lot of work, man. Specifically because, as I recall, there's some rule about shipping military equipment with full fuel tanks. You can't do it, right? So, you gotta. Don't quote me on that. That may or may not have just. I mean, I was in during the Obama years for this sort of thing, so that might have been him. All these kind. And by the way, in the stupid rules thing, right? There are lines on trains. You can't have tires over the line, right? All kinds of stuff like this. It is a full day to get one company's worth of equipment onto a train, at least for an artillery battery. I'm sure that other people who have less stuff, it takes less time, but I'm sure the tankers aren't much better off.
I'm trying to remember where I saw it. It was somebody. Shit. Now I'm drawing a blank on where it was, but somebody was talking about talking about the rail lines and how stuff is shipped. Like the reason that the rail spacing is the way it is goes back to like ancient Rome and the wheel spacing on their chariots and the distance that their wheels were spaced on their chariots for their roads. And then like, what is it? The size of the
rocket that goes
the rockets on the rocket boosters for NASA, because where they were made, they had to pass through a mountain, and the mountain only had so much clearance, so they had to make them this size so that they would fit through the mountain. So like that's like you're talking about, like the lines on the train that you can't have wheels hanging off and stuff. Like there's so much that goes into it that like, and that could just be because they have to go over a bridge in fucking Kansas somewhere that because of the way the bridge was built 70 years ago, that's the way it has to be. It can't go over it, and it would cost too much to replace the bridge. So this is just what you get to deal with. Like,
I mean, that is, oh man, the 70-year-old thing is a real thing. Because there's, you might say to yourself, well, it's the U.S. government. They can build another bridge. And if it was one bridge, they would do it. And they have done it. All right. There have been a couple of times where the feds came in and went, we want to ship things through here, so we're just going to make a new one. Right. But when it's 2,000 bridges, when it's 5,000 bridges, right? I mean, when you see whomever the current president of the United States is going, I'm going to refurb the entire country's infrastructure. And then all pundits come out and be like, that's a $200 trillion idea. To hell with this guy. That's what you're talking about, right? I know you think they're talking about your local pothole. They're not. All right. They're talking about bridges. They're talking about overpasses and underpasses. They're talking about much bigger things in your local pothole, which, by the way, if anybody ever does go on this crusade to refurb all of America's infrastructure, your local pothole's not getting fixed. Okay. It's just, that's not coming.
That's like the, since the last time we talked, we had the bridge in Baltimore, the Key Bridge in Baltimore that got hit by that big shipping container and everything that went on with that. And yes, it was a big ordeal. Do you know how many bridges get hit just on a weekly basis? Like if you've ever lived on the Mississippi River and been somewhere that you have to cross regularly, there's a good chance at least once a week you're not going to be able to take the bridge that you normally do to get home, and you're going to have to detour about 45 minutes to an hour out of your way to take the next bridge because something hit that bridge and they've got it shut down while they check shit out. Like bridges get hit all the time. It's not unusual. It's just unusual that it's catastrophic of that nature. Like, it's usually not something that big. But again, like that, you could tell by the video that the water levels were pretty high. And they're like, again, going back to like the Mississippi, there are parts of the Mississippi that only the most seasoned veteran pilots and captains are allowed to traverse past when the water is up past a certain point, because you could be coming out of a turn or like a curve or a bend in the river 2 miles upstream, and if you're not at the right spot, you're going to hit a bridge, and depending on what you're pushing, it could be catastrophic. So they only let certain captains go past certain points at certain times of the year. And like that incident seemed like it was probably one of those that should have had some restrictions that were put on. And, was it anything nefarious? I don't know. I don't think so, based on what I saw from it and what I know of like large vessels on moving water traffic. But, but the average person doesn't know any of that. Like they see boat hit bridge fall down. This really bad. Holy shit. Yeah. It's an attack on our infrastructure.
Well, so that and look how garbage our bridges are, right? Because I saw some of that too, right? Like, they just hit it with one ship and it falls down. Like, they hit that bridge with a small mountain, you asshole.
Right. You don't have any fucking clue how much weight is on that vessel. Like, do you have any fucking clue how much weight is in one container that's on that vessel? Can you even fathom? Like, you can't even fathom how much weight is in one container, much less all of those containers that are piled on, plus how much the structure itself weighs. Like,
right. Well, just how much how much do the containers weigh? All right.
Right.
Because that alone, once you have that many of them, is a pretty substantial amount of weight. No ship, no nothing. Just that quantity of containers is not light. All right.
Yeah.
But this is the thing, because when I was a kid, when I was younger, and El Nino things happened, right? I was standing on a bridge in Northern California and I felt trees hitting the bridge because the water level was so high. And I thought to myself at the time, because I knew nothing about anything, like, man, that's incredible, right? And as you get older, you think, it turns out bridges are intended to get hit with much heavier stuff than trees, like ridiculously heavy. So, yeah, okay, kind of. It is a little unnerving when you're relatively young, standing on a tree you can tell, you could watch the tree get sucked under the bridge, and then the bridge will shake as it hits the pylon, and fine. But at the same time, that bridge is intended to get hit by trees regularly, right? For the next 100 years, who gives a shit? But it turns out a couple 100 tons of ship and cargo, it's a little bit different than a tree.
Well, it's like whenever that thing, as soon as it lost power, like you see all the power go out, I'm like, all right, they're fucked. Like, It does, like you cannot, there is literally no way to account for what it's going to do at this moment. And
just get out and paddle, man. It'll be fine.
It was, I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was exactly 10 seconds. Like I timed it when you see the lights all go off and before the lights come back on, it's exactly 10 seconds. That's forever on moving water. Like you can't, you have no way to account for that. And then once it's drifted, you can't course correct. Like you're just trying to minimize
no
the
power
damage.
steering on a boat, you say?
You're just trying to minimize the amount of damage that you're going to do and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and look, those guys probably, looking at it, they probably would have been better off not trying to course correct even what they did, right? But look, there.
But what else are you going to do?
As,
like when the power goes out and you see a fucking bridge, like you think, oh God, I got to try to miss this thing,
right?
And, you know, like
it's
like when if you're driving down, you know, people wreck all the time because they'll not pay attention. They'll slip a tire off the side of the road, and then they overcorrect coming back, and they end up, rolling their vehicle over. Like it's that kind of thing. Like it's instinctive that you're going to overcorrect for the shit that just happened, and
and it is a thing. This is exactly where I was going. Because you know what? By the way, if you're heading off that side of the road and it's not, there's not a ravine there or something, right? Don't do that shit in Donner Pass. But specifically, like here in Texas, there's I don't know, 50 feet or something of gently sloping grass. If your options are yank the wheel back and roll, or tap them brakes and roll down the grass, man, you'll probably be fine. Though I say that having watched a guy flip his truck doing that exact thing. So, but either way, you're gonna have to make a decision at that point. And look, I'm not here to be overly critical of guys who were trying not to do something and fucked it up. But those decisions, often the right one is pretty counterintuitive, right? Like that get back on track thing that feels good, right? Feels good right down to the bottom of your toes till your car's rolling, till you're hitting a bridge with a boat, and okay, had they not course corrected, there's some possibility they would have missed it, and none of us ever would have heard about it, truth be told. But
how many do you think had something like that happen and missed it, and we never knew up to that, before that happened? There were probably a bunch of guys that had to throw out a pair of pants after going under that bridge because something shifted. Like the current shifted just a little bit, and they weren't expecting it, and they came up with a real close miss.
Well, I mean, if you do these sorts of things, how many times have you been towing something particularly heavy and something went ridiculously wrong? Like I towed a friend's truck from Virginia to Texas, right? And on my way out of Virginia, there's this huge left-hand turn. And on my side of the turn, everything is clear. And on the other side of the turn, traffic was dead stop. And he owned an F-250. And so I start going through this turn, and there's just brake lights everywhere. Fuck it. Both feet on the pedal. Yeah, there's nothing else I can do about this. I don't know, 2 feet to the next car by the time I stopped. And we could stay here backed up for a minute when my heart comes out of my throat so I can drive again. Jesus. As I'm holding onto this brake pedal, God, those tie down straps, they're on there well, right? They're not going to break. This truck is about to flip on top of me. Every thought in the world of everything that could go wrong.
Oh God, it's dark
every day.
It's dark now, and so you can't see it. But out the window over my shoulder, I have a boat that I got from my uncle, and that's like my son and I's project boat. Apparently, the strap that holds the fucking boat onto the trailer was dry rotted. And when we picked it up, it looks like it's, good and secure. When we got home, that strap's just dangling.
Yep.
Like, I don't even know how the fucking boat is still on the trailer. Like, because it's a relatively windy road to get from the main highway to our house. Like, when we pulled in and I backed it in and we go to, like, set the blocks under the wheels and stuff, I was like, I wonder how long that strap's been broke. Like that's literally the only thing keeping this boat from just sliding off. Like, holy fuck, this could have been really bad.
Look, these stories probably sound ridiculous to you. I've never met a truck driver without one, ever.
Right?
Yeah, not in my entire life, and I must have known hundreds of truck drivers throughout my life. Half of them are dead because they were career truck drivers who were adults when I was a kid, and they've just died of old age now. All right. Every single one of them. Yeah, so I was driving through this spot and this guy slammed on his brakes because a squirrel. And, I got the truck up on one tire and it landed better, one line of tires, just only a couple inches, but I'm trying to get around past this guy and it landed back. And, the next truck stop, I was paying for a shower, but otherwise I was fine. These things happen every day. All right. Many, many times a day.
Oh, man. So in college, I worked for women's basketball teams. I tell people I got my college paid for on a women's basketball scholarship, which was not untrue. And I did it before I could, it would have been okay for me to play and call myself a woman. But we were going from northern Iowa to Columbia, Missouri, and a snowstorm hit. And we left northern Iowa after the game. And so it's like middle of the night. And I was the only one awake. Everybody else on the bus is asleep. It's just me and the bus driver. And we're kind of talking and stuff. And all of a sudden, all we see, it's just white. We hit a blizzard. You can't see anything. And then the next thing we see is just red lights everywhere. And he yanks the wheel. We run off into the median and run through the median for a ways. And then he pulls it back onto the road where there's a gap. And we managed to miss this entire, just dead stopped piece of traffic. And nobody else on the bus woke up. I'm like, holy fuck, we should all be dead. How'd you do that? He was like, I don't know, but
don't talk.
That was intense. He was like, you're not planning on going to sleep anytime soon. And I was like, God, I don't think I can go to sleep for the next 3 days. What do you mean? All
even
we
if I was
saw was
planning
a
on it,
wall of
no.
red lights in front of us. I thought we were dead for sure. Yeah, and that shit happens all the fucking time. The near misses, boats missing a bridge and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Man, the fact that it happened was the exception to the rule. Probably the rule is that ends up being a near miss, and everybody on the boat is like, holy fuck, how do we pull that off? These things don't happen frequently, but when they do, they're usually pretty fucking catastrophic.
Yeah, that is the thing that I think most of the country really doesn't understand. And listening to pundits talk will make you decide that immediately, right? Because pundits are like, I can't believe that these certified drivers of this sort of heavy equipment could possibly let this sort of thing happen. I'm like, no? Have you met any? That's yeah, I drove a load without my trailer brakes attached for 200 miles, and I stopped to pick up some diesel, and I noticed that they weren't attached. Luckily, there was no traffic, and I was driving at 2 a.m, so it didn't really matter. But it happens.
That's like the Baltimore bridge thing. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I think I was following the updates live as they were coming out, sitting at work. It was middle of the night. That kind of shit happens all the time, and that's when people usually move stuff, is in the middle of the night when there's low traffic, not a lot going on. That way, in the event that something does fuck up, minimal casualty damage that can be done from it.
This is true even, again, back to truck drivers, right? Who, if you have never done late night driving on one of the major freeways in the middle of nowhere, it is an experience. All right. Your 5-lane freeway that is bumper to bumper traffic at 5 p.m. One, there's nobody on the road but you, some guy in a Jeep, because there's always some guy in a Jeep, and 15 semis. All right. That's what's on the road. Yeah, okay. Occasionally there'll be somebody else, but it's always those things. And there is nothing quite like watching a semi do this across 5 lanes. And I mean, he's not like intentionally weaving. He's just this dude is clearly falling asleep. Just right. You can tell. I've followed a couple of guys like that for 100 miles, right? Because I'm not going to pass you. That's for damn sure. At the time, I was driving a Mazda, and you're in a semi. Oh wait, you know.
And if you can get it, if you can like get in good with a couple of them that are like running together and just like hang with them, that they'll let you get in front of them, and then they'll get back in front of you, and like you can just roll and you can just like it's like to people who haven't had the experience of driving on, like you said, on major highways and stuff, like the ones that run cross country, either east and west or north and south. If you can get on some of those in after 11 p.m., before 5 a.m., get in with some trucks and just see how shit moves and how the road works.
Yeah,
man, it's an experience.
But by the way, if you do this, right, you're in front of the semis and one of them comes up to pass you, right? Don't start racing him, right? He's doing that because it will even out all of your gas mileage, right? To be better than what it would have been if you were just driving alone, right? He is trying to do you a favor, and you're being a dickhead. Okay,
just roll with these dudes. They know what the fuck they're doing. They know where they're going. Like, if they go to pull off at the truck stop, pull off at the truck stop. Walk inside, talk to them, like be nice. It makes life a lot more pleasant.
It's not
when you're driving at that time of the night,
right? It's not the 90s or 80s anymore. So the likelihood that they are doing a bunch of meth is lower, not zero, lower. Okay.
I feel like every episode kind of boils down to like get the fuck out and have some life experience. Like see how shit really works, and you'll have a greater appreciation for it and a better understanding of it.
Yeah. So one of my many lessons of the internet over my life is telling people just go out and do things. We have come to such a weird place in society that if you say just go out and do things, the answer you get is like what? Right? Like just nothing of interest to you? Nothing. You just like video games, porn. You go to work so you can do more video games and porn? Yeah, basically. Okay then. I don't really like have you considered like a little league team? And try not to let them kick your ass, even though you're 35. Seriously, I can't imagine how many times I have been asked a question that basically boils down to how do I make friends? I'm like, you never had one? Like, how'd you make the last one? Do more of that. Okay. Well, the last one I met in school. Okay, so what was the context of that? Well, we were in school together, right? So you were in a place doing a thing with another person, and at some point you made a friend.
Maybe try going places and doing things where other people are, and see see how that works out for you. Be a little bit social, and it'll go a long way. You don't even have to be friendly; just like not be an asshole or standoffish. Like, and you can even be a little bit standoffish. Just don't be completely standoffish.
And a little bit of an asshole.
Right.
You just can't be a complete asshole.
It's like we were talking about the smoking thing before we started. Moderation is a good thing. Like, try it out.
Weird, but this. Oh man. So, I'm coming to the conclusion that most people, when they say you need a hobby, right? Or when they're giving someone the advice, you need a hobby, they're leaving out an important context, which is you need a hobby that has some public facing portion, right? It doesn't even have to be the whole hobby's public facing. Like, I don't know, you got a project car, don't just work on it in the garage with the door closed. All right, just roll that bitch out onto the driveway, work on it there. That's it. I'm not saying don't work on your car. I'm saying just move it, right? And not even very far, like 20 feet. All right. I don't know, you play Warhammer, like go to the game shop and talk to other people about Warhammer. That's it. I'm not saying don't do whatever it is that you want to do. Just the public facing portion, do that portion. Just include it. And at some point, you'll find a friend. Okay? It will happen. All right. Now, this piece of advice is openly said as this is how you make friends, but all right, how do I get this group, how do I get a group of people together who want to accomplish goal? Well, if you knew more than 6 people, of which 5 don't live in the same state as you because they're your effective pen pals that you went to high school with, it would probably be easier to accomplish some sort of goal that you and your friend group may want. I don't know. I just, if you need a group of people, it helps to have a group of people. It's weird. I know. Ridiculous advice. But trust me, just roll with me for a little bit. It's okay to know people.
Just stand outside and wave at the neighbors as they drive by. One of them's going to stop and be like, hey,
unless you live in Harlem, don't do it there.
Like when we first moved here, I did stuff in the yard all the time, and we've got this garage, another big shop house, and then another house that's just down on the corner. And so I was walking back and forth between all of our different things that we've got, and people drive through, and so I just wave at everybody. My wife got mad at me one time. She's like, "Why'd you wave at that chick?" I was like, I wave at everybody that drives down our road. Like I don't see who's in the car. I just see
till the hand's at least here.
All right. I just see vehicle coming and I wave at them. I smile real big and I wave. And every once in a while, somebody will like stop and pull their or roll the window down and talk to me and stuff. And so within a year of moving here, I knew literally everybody that lived anywhere out here because eventually they would stop and be like, "Hey, how are you doing today?" Like just the simple act of smiling and waving. People will
welcome to the yet another problem with this, right? Is part of the reason, by the way, that you made your friends in the 3rd grade is because you were a friendly person in the 3rd grade. All right. Now, because so many people are ridiculously terminally online and are determined that everyone on planet Earth, except the 6 people they approve of, are basically the devil. That's the issue, my man. Like you just go say hi, be friendly. And by the way, if they turn out to be shitheads, the option to tell them to go fuck themselves is always there. Okay? Like, yeah. Man, you seemed like a nice guy, but you do meth and have sex with dogs. Go fuck yourself. Boom. Done. All right?
But that also gets back to like the crux of these episodes is if you do shit like that and you start to meet people and talk to people, you're going to start to find out about like how some of this shit works. People have different experiences or questions about stuff. And then maybe y'all are all asking the same questions and you start looking for the answers instead of sitting around just freaking the fuck out every time you see a rail car going by with Humvees on it. Like,
oh man. And I don't know that I haven't seen any vets freak out about this because I'm sure I've seen at least one. But the huge majority of them are like, we do this every day. Why are you losing a shit about it now? Right. And the part of that is that people don't know vets. Right. Part of that is that huge portions of society, if their life depended on changing their own oil, would die right there. All right. And you know what? I have heard, I have a handful of friends who are ridiculously rich and have heard me give speeches like you should know how to change your own oil. And one of them pulled me aside and he said, "You know how much it costs to get my oil changed?" I said, "I don't know, probably somewhere between 30 and $80, depends on what you're talking about. He says, yeah, you know how long it takes me to make $80? And I went, no. He said, somewhere between 1 and 2 seconds. I'm not changing my own fucking oil. And I went, well, hey, look, man, that advice ain't for you, clearly. And, if that's you, then yeah, you probably don't need to know how to change your own oil. But it's pretty rare that I find someone who makes that kind of money who isn't somewhat friendly, has friends, has networks of people that they know, has, even if he was like, oh my God, the world's coming to an end, they're moving all this military equipment, all you do is just pick up the phone and be like, Don, what do you think about them moving this military equipment? I'd be like, it happens every year, don't worry about it. Right. And that would be the end of it. Right. But as opposed to that, we have social media now where everybody gets to poop their pants for months. And I hope that some thread and or ridiculously long post goes viral enough that people shut up.
And if not, we'll just refer them to this episode and they can get all their information that they need on that in the first 30 to 40 minutes, and then some just general life shit after that.
I am becoming more and more convinced that more than just talking about these things are necessary. And we'll see what that turns into. I am told things are coming that will change my mind about whether or not I should make my own content. We'll see if that's true. But I gotta say, it's much easier to just be like, yeah, man, you do all the work and I'll just show up and talk.
Works for me. That's kind of what I like to do anyway.
See, there you go.
In the meantime, until we do this again, highly recommend going out and driving in the middle of the night for no other reason than just to see how the roads actually work. Go do some weird shit that you didn't otherwise think you needed to, and just find out how shit actually works, because what you're going to find out is it's both a whole lot simpler and also a whole lot more complicated than what you may have realized. And it's because of all of that this whole crazy fucking system works. And not understanding the nuts and bolts of how it works is why you're ignorant and don't understand how the world is actually operating, and why we have to sit down and talk about this kind of shit on a more or less monthly basis. Yeah,
pretty much.
Thank you, everybody that was watching and in the comments, and for everybody who watches and listens later on. And we will catch you next time. Have a good one later.
Bye.